So recently I was on a backpacking trip where one of the friends that I was hiking with took a fall and injured himself. He fell forward, he hit his face on a rock, and he gashed his eyebrow open. And it really could have been a much worse situation than it was. But thankfully we were able to hike out, we were able to get him to a doctor, get stitches, and just get taken care of. And that is best case scenario. But it got me thinking from that trip, like, are there things that I overlook as a backpacker, or in general, we as backpackers, whether new to backpacking or experienced, just overlook as being an important part of our gear system to help us when certain things happen, or just would aid in having a better experience? And I think very often we put so much weight as backpackers on the things that seem really important, and they are, like your tent and your backpack and your sleep system, because those provide shelter and safety and such, and like the layers that we choose to keep us warm and dry and everything. But are there some smaller pieces of gear that we overlook as, this would never happen to me, so I don't need to bring it, or I just don't know any different or know any better, and so I don't put the emphasis on it and just completely overlook it? So maybe some of these things will come as a little bit of a surprise, but I want to talk about them because I think they're important. And we're going to start with first aid. Now, because I opened the video talking about a first aid situation, that's what I want to dig into. And this is my personal little first aid kit that is pretty robust. It is built to be able to handle any kind of situation that I would encounter for myself. We'll just go through a couple of the items that I think are really important. Now, we all know that Band-Aids, medication, gauze, and tape, and those kinds of things are an important staple to a first aid kit, but there are a couple other items that I think we overlook, or we didn't think would be an important thing to have in a first aid kit. So the first thing is a small pair of scissors, something more than just the little tiny scissors that you have on your small, tiny Swiss Army knife. These are more convenient, they're more helpful, they're sharper, and they just make the job easier for when you do need to cut things like tape or KT tape or gauze and that kind of thing, moleskin, etc. The next thing that I feel like is really, really important to have in your first aid kit is an irrigation syringe. When you have some kind of open wound take place out in the field, you want to be able to clean this properly so that you can prevent or eliminate the opportunity for infection as much as possible. So filling this with clean water and then irrigating that with a higher pressure than just like running water over the wound makes a huge difference in being able to get debris and dirt and just junk out of that wound, so that you do eliminate the opportunity as much as possible of infection happening while you are out in the field, and just being able to manage it better. Now, outside of that, with your first aid kit in general, I just feel like we should have a more robust kit than I think we normally would carry out on a trip, so that we can take care of any of those things that do happen while we were out there. There are great pre-made kits like this Adventure Medical Kit, but I do think adding a few things to make it a little bit more robust to handle more situations in the field is important and shouldn't be overlooked. Now, the next consideration has to do with organizing your gear in your backpack. Now, I see very often here on YouTube people talking about get rid of the ditty bags, get rid of all of the storage bags to save weight, just throw everything inside of your backpack. And I understand that to a point. Having less things makes your whole system more simplistic. It does save weight and such, but I do think that there is a balance in organizing your gear and having a place for specific things so that it's easy to find and they don't get lost or have any kind of issues from getting damaged by not having a home. And I'm talking about things like your electronics, like your poop kit, your first aid supplies, or other small pieces of gear that need a home. And so there are some really cool gear organization bags that are fairly inexpensive, really lightweight, but they provide a home for all of those things. So like these little Tyvek bags from Gossamer Gear that are an envelope style bag that have a pleated bottom. But then maybe a different style of bag is more of these box style bags that have a center zip at the top. These are good for like your poop kit, for putting your snacks and such into. They just make it possible for you to very simply organize your gear and also be lightweight at the same time. Like this is so light. And I think that organizing your gear, having a place for it, is really important. So all I'm saying is organize your gear in very simple ways that makes it easy to find and put into your pack in strategic places so that you have good access to it and stuff doesn't get lost, damaged, and dirty while you're out on the trail. Now, the next thing that gets overlooked, in my opinion, that I feel like is really important is being able to navigate in the backcountry. Wherever you go, being able to know exactly where you're at, being able to get from point A to point B and do it without getting lost or having any kind of issues. And whether that is using a paper map and a compass or using an online tool or an app on your phone like ONX Backcountry, I think it's just an important thing for you to know how to use and be part of your planning process. I just spent time on the phone yesterday with a friend of mine. We're going out on a trip soon, and we spent time looking at campsite options, at water options, what the route looks like, and just broke things up into each day of the trip to make sure that we have all of that information in the palm of our hand so that we can navigate and make better decisions while we're out there on the trail. And it helps with making contingency plans as well. If things do go bad, let's go back to the story of the trip that I was talking about at the beginning of the video. We used ONX Backcountry on that trip to be able to look at the satellite imagery to see where we could get out of the canyon that we were in so that we could get to a road as quickly as possible. And because I had this on my phone, I had it all downloaded for offline use, I was able to look at the topography, see how far it was going to be to walk, and find an alternate route than what we were initially thinking for a way to get out to get help. So I just really emphasize the value of using a tool like this as part of your backpacking experience, your planning, and just being able to navigate and have good information in the palm of your hand while you're out on your trips. It really is such a good tool. But if using a tool like ONX Backcountry is not your style, then I recommend being able to know how to use paper maps and a compass and orient and navigate yourself that way as well. Now, this next item here is a little contradictory to what I just talked about with navigation in relying on your phone for your navigation and using the app and such, but I think this is a little bit different in the terms of satellite communication. And I'm talking about the importance of having a dedicated satellite communication device. I think we're in this unique like flux stage of where a phone like the iPhone 16 Pro that I have here can communicate by satellite, send text messages and such, and even call search and rescue in an emergency situation. But I don't think that we are quite yet in the position where this can be relied on in the same way that we can a device like the Zoleo, from a few different standpoints. This does not have the battery life or the durability that a device like this has, whether it's the Zoleo, InReach, etc. But specifically the Zoleo has like 200 hours plus of time that this can run. There is no way that your phone is going to run for that long. And I have no qualms or issues with doing this kind of thing with my Zoleo, where you better believe I'm not about to do that with my $1,200 iPhone. This is more durable. It is a reliable device that also has more functionality than just sending and receiving text messages. It will do search and rescue, obviously, as well, but I can also pull weather reports. Also gives you the ability, at least with the Zoleo, for you to message back and forth with medical professionals if something took place that's like, I don't know if I need search and rescue, but I want some help with this. I can message a doctor, a medical professional, and get help with a situation and that's pretty amazing. I can't do that with the iPhone. We will see where satellite communication comes into play in years to come. But I think right now, just because, well, now I've got this, that we are overlooking the benefit of still having a dedicated satellite communicator, particularly if you spend a considerable amount of time in the backcountry out of cell service. Now, lastly here, let's talk about footwear and socks. I think that this gets overlooked way more than it should because it's such an important part of your overall experience in the backcountry. Once you have problems with blisters and foot problems, that can absolutely ruin a trip, and it can even take you off trail, especially if you were on a long distance trail. So taking care of your feet and having the right footwear for the trip that you are going on is really, really critical. Very often right now we see here on YouTube the narrative that boots for backpacking are bad and we should be using trail runners, something much lighter weight. I disagree. You should use what works best for you and for the conditions and the trail conditions that you're going to be hiking in. The reason I put so much emphasis on that is you could actually injure yourself by going with a really lightweight shoe if your foot is not ready for it or the terrain doesn't make sense for having a really light shoe. So just because somebody says boots are bad, you should never hike in boots again, doesn't make it true. Hike in what makes sense for the conditions. I personally like to go kind of the middle ground for the vast majority of my trips, and I will use something like this Danner Trail 2650, which is a hiking shoe. It's not a trail runner necessarily, but it has good stability. It is nice and strong through the sole of the foot, and it protects you from like sharp rocks and just kind of the harsh trail conditions that you might find in rocky areas and such when you're out. What I would avoid in any way, shape, or form is, well, I just have some simple tennis shoes and so I'll hike in those. The issue with that is look at the tread of this versus the tread of this, or even on this Danner. This can actually pose a safety issue, even though it might be a good lightweight shoe. If I don't have the grip that I need while I'm out on the trail, I could slip and fall, injure myself, and have a problem that way. So having something that is designed for hiking is really important. I'm talking about socks as like the other big thing to consider. Not hiking in cotton socks, not using something that is too thin or too thick that it then puts weird pressure points inside of the shoe and that kind of thing. Finding just a good synthetic wool bamboo sock. I personally love the Swiftwick Flight XT trail socks. They're lightweight, but they have also a lot of support, and they're not just a floppy piece of fabric that once it gets like hot and sweaty in your foot, it like stretches and then creates hot spots and such. So put emphasis, put just your mind into take care of your feet so that you are not then having foot problems while you're out there on the trail and not have a good experience. Thank you so much for watching today, guys. If you're not subscribed to the channel, please do subscribe. Hope you have an awesome day. We'll catch you on the next one. See you later.